Drift back in time and enjoy a splendid day at the RenfrewFair. Rekindle your memories about your time having fun at this cherished annual event. Reminisce and share your fair memories and photos with us. A short story by Richard J.M. Gauthier, author of the Little Ricky the Boy, the Lad, and the Young Man collections of short stories. When you support Rick, you support the needy. He's using his talent to help the less fortunate. He donates every dollar to a local food bank. Bernie and Ricky's day at the RenfrewFair. The early September sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the rolling hills and farmland surrounding Renfrew, Ontario. It was a Saturday afternoon, and the RenfrewFair was in full swing. The crisp scent of autumn leaves mingled with the aromas of fried dough, popcorn, and cotton candy, creating a tantalizing atmosphere that beckoned visitors from near and far. The fairgrounds, alive with the sounds of laughter, the clinking of midway rides, and the distant mooing of cattle, felt like a world apart. Ricky and Bernie Gauthier, two brothers with 13 years between them, approached the entrance to the fairgrounds. Ricky, a teenager with hazel green and gold eyes that sparkled with anticipation, had saved up all summer for this day. He had cut grass, run errands, and done odd jobs around town, all to treat his elder brother Bernie to a day at the fair. Bernie, the eldest of 5 siblings, stood beside Ricky, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth as he took in the bustling scene before them. He was a stout man, a bit chubby, with bright blue eyes and thinning fine hair. The brothers, both wearing jeans and sneakers, looked ready for a day of fun. Ricky sported a blue and white Adidas sports shirt with the classic white stripes on the shoulders and down the sides, while Bernie wore a crisp white Evinrude t-shirt with the red and blue logo proudly displayed on the front. Ball caps perched on their heads, completing their casual, comfortable look. As they reached the ticket booth, Ricky stepped forward, a confident grin on his face. 2 tickets, please, he said, handing over the money he had so carefully saved. The ticket seller, an elderly man with a weathered face and a cap that read Renfrew Fairgrounds, smiled warmly. "First time at the RenfrewFair, eh?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with the familiarity of the scene. "Yes, sir," Ricky replied, glancing at Bernie with a mixture of excitement and pride. "I've been to the Shawville Fair, but never anything like this." "You're in for a treat, then," the ticket seller chuckled, handing them their tickets. "Enjoy yourselves, boys." "Thank you, sir," Bernie added, tipping his hat slightly. "It's a beautiful day for it, isn't it?" The ticket seller nodded. "Couldn't ask for better. Clear skies and a good crowd. Hope you get to try the new rides. There's something special this year." With tickets in hand, the brothers passed through the gates and into the heart of the fairgrounds. The sights and sounds enveloped them. The clatter of hooves on the dirt paths, the calls of vendors hawking their goods, and the bright colors of the midway rides towering above the fair. Ricky's eyes widened as he took it all in. This was a world away from the smaller, more intimate Shawville Fair. They decided to start with the exhibit halls, taking their time to explore each building in turn. The first building they entered housed the animal judging. The air was thick with the scent of hay and the earthy smell of livestock. Cows, sheep, and lambs stood in their pens, their coats brushed to a glossy sheen. Farmers and breeders, some of whom had the familiar surnames of Renfrew, such as the McIntyres, O'Neills, and Donahues, stood proudly beside their animals, chatting with visitors. Bernie, who had always had a fondness for animals, leaned over the rail of one pen, admiring a prize-winning Holstein cow. "Look at the size of her," he said, turning to Ricky. "Reminds me of the old cow Uncle Mike used to have." Ricky nodded, though his mind was more on the novelty of the experience than memories of the past. He watched as a young boy, no older than 10, led a sheep to the judging ring. The boy's face was a picture of concentration, his tongue poking out of the corner of his mouth as he guided the animal through the gate. "Good luck, lad," Bernie called out, giving the boy a thumbs up. The boy grinned back, his nervousness momentarily forgotten. As they moved along, they ran into George and Andy Laviolette, 2 cousins who were also at the fair. George, a lanky fellow with a mischievous grin, greeted them with a hearty handshake. "Bernie, Ricky, how are you lads doing? Enjoying the fair?" "Couldn't be better," Bernie replied, smiling. "The weather's perfect and the turnout's great. How about you? Been here long?" "Got here just after noon," Andy chimed in, a tall, sturdy man with a warm smile. "We've been over to the horse show and checked out the farm machinery. You should see the new tractor models. They're impressive." "Maybe we'll head that way later," Ricky said. "But first, we're making our rounds through the exhibits." You won't be disappointed, George said with a wink. Lots of good stuff to see. Make sure you stop by Aunt Jenny's table. She's entered her famous apple pie again. We will, Bernie promised. Tell Aunt Stella we'll be by later to say hello. Will do, Andy replied, giving them a wave as they parted ways. In the next building, the brothers found themselves surrounded by a dazzling array of crafts. The locals had outdone themselves. There were quilts in every conceivable pattern and color, intricate woodworking projects, and benches and chairs made from tree branches that had been lovingly sanded and polished to a smooth finish. Ricky ran his fingers over the fabric of one quilt, marveling at the detail. A woman with silver hair and kind eyes, who introduced herself as Mrs. O'Shaughnessy, noticed his interest. That quilt took me the better part of a year to make, she said proudly. Every stitch is by hand. It's very beautiful, Ricky said earnestly. My Aunt Dorothy's entered one in the contest too. Can't wait to see it. Oh, Dorothy Rubel's your aunt. She's got quite the talent, Mrs. O'Shaughnessy remarked, clearly impressed. Be sure to vote for her, though with competition like this, it'll be a tough call. We'll definitely vote, Bernie assured her, giving her a nod of respect. Your work is remarkable too, Mrs. O'Shaughnessy. My mom would love something like this. Well, thank you, dear, she replied, beaming. Enjoy the fair, boys. The brothers moved on, stopping to admire paintings and other artwork by local artists. Bernie paused in front of a painting of the Bonnechair River, done in rich, warm colors that captured the essence of a late summer's day. That's real talent, he said quietly, more to himself than to Ricky. As they left the craft exhibits, they headed toward the food exhibits. The building was a cornucopia of scents, sweet, savory, and everything in between. Tables were laden with jars of preserves, pickles, jams, and jellies, their labels proudly declaring their makers' names. Ricky's stomach growled as they passed a table laden with pies, cakes, and other baked goods. Our Aunt Jenny's got some of her special breads and pies in the contest, Bernie pointed out, his mouth watering at the sight of a particularly delicious-looking apple pie. They were greeted by Aunt Jenny herself, a robust woman with rosy cheeks and a warm smile, who was bustling about making sure everything was just so. Hello, boys, what do you think? She asked, gesturing to her entries. Looks amazing, Aunt Jenny, Ricky said, giving her a hug. I'm sure you'll win. Oh, we'll see, Aunt Jenny replied, though her smile suggested she was confident of a prize. Did you try the bread yet? There's a sample over there. Go ahead and have a taste. The brothers eagerly accepted the offer, savoring the soft, fresh bread. This is the best bread I've ever tasted, Bernie declared, wiping crumbs from his lips. I agree, Ricky added. You've outdone yourself, Aunt Jenny. Well, you boys enjoy yourselves, she said, her eyes twinkling with pleasure. Make sure to check out the competition and let me know what you think. We will, Bernie promised, and with another wave, they moved on. As they strolled towards the midway, they bumped into Jerry Rubel, their cousin, who was standing near a display of prize-winning vegetables. Jerry, a wiry man with a quick wit, greeted them with a hearty laugh. Well, if it isn't Bernie and Ricky, what brings you lads to our neck of the woods? We're just taking in the sights, Bernie replied with a grin. How have you been, Jerry? Busy as ever, Jerry said, nodding. I'm up to Renfrew this weekend to visit with Mom. I love the going to the fair each year. Mom has her quilt in one of the contests, and I'm here to support her as well. I think she has a very good chance of winning this year. How are your parents, boys? How are Aunt Veronica and Uncle Cyril? They're good, Bernie replied. Dad's been swamped with work at the garage, but he said that he would like to take Mom to the fair tomorrow. Dad rarely works on Sunday, so I think he and Mom will come to Renfrew tomorrow. I know that they wouldn't like to miss the annual fair for anything. If you are here tomorrow as well, you'll probably see them. Great. Until then, please give them my regards, Jerry said. And don't forget to check out the pumpkin contest. It's one of the highlights this year. We will, Ricky said, smiling. Good to see you, Jerry. As they continued their exploration of the fair, the brothers encountered more familiar faces. Uncle Lorne and Aunt Ida, who were chatting with some friends near the horse show. Bernie and Ricky approached their kin and hollered hello. Uncle Lorne stretched out his arm and shook hands with each of his nephews. Aunt Ida gave each lad a warm, firm hug. She smiled and said, Hey lads, it's really great to see you. How are you both? Bernie smiled and said, We are super great, Aunt Ida. I am being treated today. My young bro here is treating me to the sights and sounds of the fair. Uncle Lorne, wide-eyed, impressed, said, What a lucky man are you, Bernie. I see you have a set of fine brothers like I have. Iggy and George would often treat me here at the fair as well. Aunt Ida cleared her throat and asked, "Where are you guys heading now?" "We are waiting for Larry and Jill. They went to buy us some drinks." Ricky smiled and offered, "We are heading over to the Midway. I am hoping that I can convince Scaredy Cat Bernie here to get on that big swinging pirate ship with me." Uncle Lorne gasped. "Better you, Bernie, than me. Okay, see you later, boys. Have fun." After another set of hugs and kisses, Bernie and Ricky moved along slowly, making their way to the Midway. As they approached, they noted more cousins, probably Margaret and Marion, waving from up atop the Ferris wheel, and some old friends of Bernie's from town who reminisced about past fairs and summers in Renfrew. Finally, they reached the Midway, where the sights and sounds of the fair truly came alive. Rides spun and whirled, and the laughter of children and the shouts of excitement filled the air. Ricky's eyes lit up as he spotted the Ferris wheel towering above them. The air was thick with the smell of fried food, and the sounds of carnival games and rides filled the air. Ricky felt a thrill of excitement as he handed over some of his hard-earned money for ride tickets. Their first stop was the Ferris wheel. As they ascended, the fairgrounds spread out below them like a patchwork quilt, the sounds of the Midway fading into the background. Bernie, who had always had a bit of a fear of heights, gripped the bar tightly, but the view soon distracted him. "Look at that, Ricky," he said, pointing to the distant hills. "You can see for miles up here. I can see all the way to the Pinnacle Hill. And look over there. It's the Ottawa River in the distance." Ricky nodded, taking in the breathtaking panorama. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Next, they tried the merry-go-round, a nostalgic choice that brought a smile to Bernie's face. The brightly painted horses bobbed up and down, the music tinkling cheerfully as they went round and round. Ricky found himself laughing as Bernie, who had chosen a particularly fierce-looking steed, pretended to be a knight charging into battle. From there, they moved on to the pirate ship, the tilt-a-whirl, the scrambler, and other classic rides of the era. Each one brought a new thrill, a new burst of adrenaline, and by the time they reached the House of Horrors, both brothers were grinning from ear to ear. The House of Horrors was dark and eerie, filled with cobwebs, creepy mannequins, and the occasional loud noise meant to startle the visitors. Ricky led the way, his heart pounding as they navigated the twists and turns. Bernie, trying to keep up a brave front, jumped at a particularly loud crash, causing Ricky to burst into laughter. "Scared, Bernie?" Ricky teased as they emerged back into the daylight. "Just a little," Bernie admitted with a chuckle, though his grin suggested he had enjoyed it more than he let on. The House of Mirrors was their next stop. The distorted reflections had them both in stitches, especially when Bernie found one that made him look impossibly tall and thin, while Ricky appeared short and stout. They spent a good 15 minutes in there laughing until their sides hurt. After the rides, it was time to eat. They made their way to the food stands, where the smell of frying oil was almost overwhelming. Ricky insisted on treating Bernie to lunch, and they started with pogos, trying them with hot mustard for the very first time. The crispy batter and savory sausage were a perfect match, and both brothers agreed they had found a new favorite fair food. Next came French fries, piled high and drenched in vinegar and salt, followed by burgers that dripped with ketchup and mustard. Dessert was a sugary feast of candy popcorn, candy apples, and cotton candy, each bite sweeter than the last. By the time they were done, Ricky's pockets were significantly lighter, but his heart was full. With full stomachs, they turned their attention to the carnival games. Ricky had always had a knack for the ring toss, and today was no exception. After a few tries, he managed to land a ring squarely on the prize peg, winning a large, fluffy teddy bear. He handed it to Bernie with a grin. "Here you go, big brother, a souvenir of our day." Bernie took the bear, a look of genuine surprise and gratitude on his face. "Thanks, Ricky," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This means a lot." They tried their luck at other games, the rifle range, the baseball throw, the money toss, and even bingo. They didn't win much else, but it didn't matter. The day had been perfect in every way. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the fairgrounds, the brothers made their way to the exit. The sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, and the lights of the Midway began to twinkle in the gathering dusk. Ricky glanced at Bernie, who was still clutching the teddy bear, and felt a deep sense of contentment. "Thanks for coming with me today, Bernie," Ricky said softly. "I know you've got a lot going on, but it really meant a lot to me." Bernie looked down at his younger brother, his eyes filled with warmth. "No, Ricky, thank you. You made today special. I'm proud of you, kid." With that, they walked out of the fairgrounds, the sounds of the Renfrew Fair slowly fading behind them as they headed home. The memories of the day would stay with them forever. A perfect day shared between brothers. A perfect day that could be had at the most marvelous Renfrew Fair. I truly hope that you have enjoyed this short story by me, Little Ricky.